are countless moments of happiness scattered through our lives. In fact, there are countless moments of happiness scattered through each and every day. The laughter of a child, the touch of a loved one, a smile from a stranger, the beauty of a sunrise, and the smell of fresh rain. These moments ask just one thing: for you to pay attention. It is the only payment required to pass through the doorway to a full and happy life.
About a year ago, Martina and I were doing some writing just in a local park. It was a beautiful Brisbane day, blue sky, sun shining, birds chirping. You get the picture. It's kind of the opposite of what we're experiencing today. We did some writing. We were occasionally discussing ideas when we noticed a father crossing the road and heading towards the playground with his young little girl. Now, she would have been about 5 years old, and she was full of beans, just running from one thing to the next, the seesaw, the flying fox, one thing to the next as Dad just settled on the bench. She finally stopped at the swing, and we knew exactly what was going to come next. "Dad! Push, Dad!" So Dad got up and obliged, wandered over, and began to give her a push. Her laughter turned to just shrieks of excitement as her legs flew up in the air, and she was just having the time of her life. After about 5 good pushes, Dad reached into his pocket and he pulled out his mobile phone. Head down, body turned slightly away. His pushes just became more erratic as he scrolled through emails, perhaps texts, might have even been social media.
Within a few minutes, Mum arrived, one hand pushing a stroller with a sleeping baby and the other carrying 2 takeaway coffees. Dad barely glanced up from his cursory pushes and his intense downward gaze. But as she approached with a coffee in her outstretched hands, we wondered to each other, which hand will he use to take the coffee? We all know this. We have moments of choice in every single day. Moments when we could look up and connect with our world, or just move through it lost in thought. Moments when we could be present with a loved one, or just turn to the next thing on our to-do list. Moments where we could focus on something with real meaning and purpose, or just get carried away with the next distraction.
So do you want to know what happened? So on that beautiful day, we saw Dad, watched him take the coffee with the hand that had been pushing his young daughter. Now, don't get us wrong, we love coffee like the next person, and I'm a passionate advocate about parents needing coffee sometimes to deal with children. But that day, it was like Dad didn't even have a conscious choice. His attention had been stolen. I doubt that he even saw the sad look on this sweet little girl's face as her exciting ride just ground to a complete stop. For us, witnessing one more moment of happiness missed was more inspiration to write our book, One Moment Please. It's time to pay attention.
Attention has become one of the most threatened resources on the planet today. And as attention fades, it's not just the simple ability to notice what's happening around you that disappears. We rely on our attention to nourish our relationships, to search out true meaning, to recognise the need to change and grow, and to connect us to moments of happiness that lie in wait. The interesting thing about all of this is that it's things like the allure of social media just drawing us down the rabbit hole. It could be the pressure of your to-do list weighing heavy on your mind, or often it's the past just rerunning like a worn-out old song. But no matter what it is, when your attention is taken from the present, that's when we lose our sense of connection, our sense of happiness. You're actually missing out on life as it unfolds around you. Do this for too long, and you'll experience a yawning emptiness, a growing sense of disconnect, and a lack of meaning in life.
The fact is, so many of us are living almost half of our lives in that kind of state. So Harvard research showed us that the average person spends 47% of their day doing one thing, but thinking about something totally different. That's nearly half your day. Switched off, on autopilot, just lost in thought. Now, it's so tempting to think it must be the people out there that are pulling up those averages. So I want to do a little bit of a test, and I'm going to ask you to give me a show of hands. I'm going to start with the one that Ruby raised. Show of hands, how many people have ever arrived in their driveway with little recollection of the journey home? Hands up. Yep, large, we're in great
Honest
company
audience.
here. What was going on there? Chances are you were rerunning the day's event, maybe planning dinner that night. Your head was caught somewhere else. How about this one? Show of hands again if you've ever walked into a room, only to ask yourself, now why did I come here again? Good. Again, we're in good company. The body's moving, but the mind's in a daydream. Now, this one's a little more embarrassing, so I want you to be really, really honest here. Hands up if you've ever lost your glasses. You've looked frantically for them everywhere. You've accused everyone around you, only to have it pointed out they are on your head. Good. Well, if you haven't done that, most people at least know someone who has done that. For all of these experiences, and no doubt there's so many more in our day, it's like the body knows the move so well, it thinks little attention is required. So we switch on to autopilot and we allow our precious attention to just get captured by distractions and caught up in these movies and dramas of our own minds. But rarely there will we find happiness. In fact, there we find all of the companions of inattention, things like anxiety, frustration, forgetfulness, complacency.
Attention is the thread that connects us to life. It's as real and tangible as the light that surrounds us and the gravity that actually holds us in place. Attention is an animating force. It brings you to the world and it brings the world to you. In fact, it's the kiss of your attention that brings things to life. So let's have a little reflection on what we might be bringing to life, because the statistics paint an interesting picture. If you're in business, it's likely you receive an email every 5 minutes. The average mobile phone user picks up their phone to check it every 4 minutes. Again, you might not think that's you, but on average, for 44% of people, the first thing that gets their attention in the morning is the mobile phone and not the partner next to them. Interruptions in the workplace, for many of us, they happen every 11 minutes. And do you know it can take 25 minutes for your attention to return to the task you were previously doing? So it's a big interruption. The amount of information you're exposed to in any one day could fill 174 newspapers. We have about 50 to 70,000 thoughts every day passing through our mind. Thank God we don't notice all of those, but they are there. And it's apparently 90% of those are exactly the same as the day before, repeated over and over. 70% of them are likely to be negative. For 30% of people, they suffer from insomnia, many because they cannot switch off that busy mind at night.
And now more than ever, those times where attention may have come back and rested in the present are now filled with noise and distraction. Has anyone ever watched anyone waiting in a line, or waiting for a friend, waiting for a bus, even waiting to cross the road? You often see people, heads down, eyes glued to mobile devices. And it's like we are filling every single idle moment with just more for attention to chew on. These used to be our brief opportunities to rest attention, to look up, to actually reconnect with the world. But now they're just times where we keep attention busily entertained. Now, it sounds like I'm blaming mobile technology here, but the truth is that even in the absence of mobile devices, we are way too accomplished at abusing our own attention and keeping it away from the present. We fill our minds with thoughts about the future, thoughts about the past, what ifs, reruns, self-talk, worries, all of these 70,000 thoughts that we're having a day. It seems like the present is actually the hardest place for our attention to visit in this modern world. And we actually saw this in practice recently at a workshop that we ran. We challenged the participants to enjoy morning tea, device-free, shock horror, in silence, just sitting with their own thoughts. You should have seen the discomfort in the room. It was just palpable. And so many people reported that task was way more difficult than they would have ever imagined. And they're not alone, because there was some research that was released late last year which showed that a large proportion of people would prefer to give themselves a mild electric shock than be alone, without distraction, and just with their own thoughts for only 15 minutes. When you hear things like that, it is just no wonder that this precious, fragile resource of attention is struggling to connect us to those moments of happiness that are just lying there, waiting patiently for us to notice them.
The definition of attention is actually to tend to care for. When you pay attention to something, you're actually saying, this is the thing I care for most in this moment. But we live in a world of contradictions. We say we care about our loved ones, but we let our to-do list come before the act of just being there with them. We say we care about our friends, but only half listen when they tell us about their day. We say we care about free time, but we wear busyness like a badge of honour. We say we care about living a life of meaning and purpose, but we fill that space for deep reflection with idle distractions. We say we care about happiness, but we dwell on worries and frustrations. All too often, we're attending to whatever intrudes loudest and fastest, rather than considering, are those the things that really matter? So we wanted to give you an opportunity to think about this for yourself. Just want you to hold up your left palm and imagine this is a sheet of paper, and on it is written the list of things that matter most to you. Doesn't matter what it is, but just for a moment think, what matters most to you? Then hold up your right palm and imagine this is the list of the things that get your attention from morning to night. Not just the to-do list and the tasks and errands, but what do you think about, dwell on, let run through your mind? What does that list look like? And then bringing it together, how well do they marry up? For many people, this simple exercise reveals how often they are just captured, stolen, or their attention's frittered away on things without a real consideration of what is important to them. It reveals how often we're driven by expectations, pressure, and the flow of distractions in our life, rather than these things that we say really matter to us. It reveals how often we're withholding attention from the loved ones in our lives, but from ourselves and from the opportunities for deep connection and happiness.
For that father at the park, the sunny morning, there is no doubt that his sweet little girl would have been at the top of the list of the things that he cares for most. But his attention was stolen that day. The flow of attention, the only medium that he could show her care, share happiness, had been diverted. So that begged the bigger question. How often are we all missing the moments to pay attention to the things that we care for most? It's often an unintentional act, but when we withhold attention, it's just like holding up a big sign that says, I don't care. And we've all been on the receiving end of one of these signs when we've been having a conversation with someone, their eyes are wandering all over the place, or they're nodding, but you can tell they're just trying to get to their part of the conversation. The lights are on, but no one's actually home.
We also know the feeling when attention is given generously. We feel engaged, connected, even uplifted. It's truly a generous act when someone gives us their attention. But usually what we do is give a cursory nod, momentary glance, and shuffle on past. And I'll ask you this afternoon, when you sat down in your seat, how many of you gave this little momentary nod, a glance to a stranger, and then settled down somewhere along that seat, along that line? So we want to give you the opportunity to practice the art of giving your attention and also have the experience of receiving the gift of full attention. I'm just going to ask you to turn to someone nearby, look them in the eye, shake their hand and say, I'm so glad I sat next to you.
Now we'll have to get their attention back. That could be the challenge.
Yes. Now it's the practice of how well you can turn your attention back to us. You can actually see and feel hear it in the room, that attention has animated this space. You probably feel that now. Rather than being depleted through use, when attention is given generously, it grows in strength as it passes from one to another.
And I saw this in action some time ago when I was shopping just at the local grocery store. The shop attendant clearly was having a bad day. Her head was down, shoulders slumped forward, no eye contact as she was just scanning my grocery items. "Are you having one of those days?" I just gently inquired. She was startled, surprised that I'd noticed or even cared to ask her. And after a very brief conversation, an exchange of common experience, we both ended up in laughter. I went on to do the rest of my shopping and I noticed I had a bit of a spring in my step. When coming back past that store again on the way to the car park, I couldn't resist but looking at her, and she was barely recognisable. The gift of attention was flowing through her, and she was passing that on to other people. She was laughing and chatting with all the customers. And it just made me think it was like that one small investment of attention had found its way into other people's minds, just like the $20 I handed over may have ended up as change in their pockets.
We should never ever underestimate the power of attention to animate the world around us. It is surely a gift we give to others, but it returns to us as inspiration, meaning, and happiness. We believe a moment of attention can change the world. So in these last few minutes, we ask you to reflect. How will you give the gift of your attention today, tomorrow, and when you return home to the things that matter most? Because moments of happiness grow as moments of attention flow.
If you go to this supermarket and shouting, "I want to buy peace of mind," then people laughing or people feel that person's mind is something wrong.
Now, this word connections is a really interesting one because our kids today are more connected than ever.
Of course, then when you're in an institution, people call you up. They tell you to perk up. Yeah, perk up, because I didn't think of that.
I should have a happiness project, I decided. As soon as I have some free time, I'm going to do that.